Do you want to take advantage of free money that your employer is already planning on giving you? Well, I'm going to show you how to do that in today's video and how your lifestyle will be better off for it. Welcome to Money Talk with Skylar Fleming, where we go beyond the dollars and cents. Let's get talking. Welcome to today's video on Money Talk with Skylar Fleming. Today's video stems from this week's podcast episode where Amanda mentioned the 401k match. That really got my mind stirring and thinking, why is it that every time the 401k is brought up or some sort of insight or question about the 401k is brought up, they always mention the match? Why is that? So I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into that and teach you a little bit about 401ks and especially the 401k match in today's video. So what is the employer match? Let's get a little bit of insight into it and understand it a little bit more. Let's add a little bit of what Amanda from this week's podcast episode had to say about the employer match.
I first got those corporate jobs. I didn't know much about money, but I did know, all right, this company is giving me a 401k, for example, and they're telling me they're going to match me up to X percent if I put X percent in. Well, I started doing that immediately. And I think that's also something different than most people. There's a lot of different schools of thought out there. I probably could have put that extra percentage into my student loans or whatever, but that really set me up long term. When I was doing max funding of my 401k at age 25, that was probably abnormal than most people my age.
People underestimate the 401k.
Discipline, right? It was it gave me that forced discipline. And if that money came out of my paycheck, that meant it wasn't in my bank account to spend on frivolous things when I was learning to be an adult. Right.
Yeah. Thanks, Amanda, for that valuable insight. And make sure you go check out that podcast episode here on YouTube or on any podcast player where you'd like to listen to it on. I'd like to add a little bit about the employer match and kind of my understanding about it. One thing that I think is extremely valuable is that the employer match is already money your employer is planning to give you, money that your employer is considering part of your compensation. So imagine yourself being told, hey, I'm going to give you a 3% raise now that you've been with the company for a year. And you're just like, nah, I don't really want it. Sure, there's a little bit more stipulation behind a 401k match, but that's essentially what you're doing. You're saying, no, I don't really want the money that you're planning to give me. And why is that? It's because you probably maybe didn't know about it, or some people don't want to contribute what they need to in order to get their employer match. So why is it so important? Well, like I said, it's free money. It's money that they're guaranteed to give you, and your lifestyle will adjust. One of my favorite pieces from the book, The Automatic Millionaire, is that your lifestyle will adjust as you increase your retirement percentage. It's really interesting how you can start at a 3% contribution to your 401k, increase it to 4%, then 5%, then 6%, and your lifestyle is going to be just fine. Think about it. 1% of your income is really not that much. So if you slowly increase your 401k to get that employer match, all you're doing is taking a little bit out of your life, but you're also capturing some of that free money from your employer. So you want to make sure you're taking advantage of that. It can be extremely powerful, and especially when you start to consider compound interest. When you consider compound interest in the equation, it really blows the reasoning out of the water. It's obvious that you need to take care of this money. Let's say you're getting a dollar for dollar match up to 5%. So realistically, it's as if you're contributing 10% of your income to your 401k. That's a good amount of money. A lot of people might land somewhere on a number of you should be saving 15% of your money towards retirement or 20. But imagine you can get 10 and all you're really contributing is just 5%. That's a pretty big deal. I hope I'm starting to open your mind up a little bit to the power that the employer match has. But I also want to talk a little bit about target date funds. I'm going to recall here a great quote and some great information shared from Paul Merriman on episode 113 of my podcast.
Ask them, how many of you want to tend to the necessary decision-making to manage your money for a lifetime? And about maybe 1% of the people in attendance will say, I want to do that. And by golly, if you don't want to really dig in and understand how the investment process works, the target date fund is the best investment product ever developed. Now, that's the good news. Wharton did a study along with Vanguard. They looked at 1.2 million 401k plan accounts. They looked at some that didn't have any target date funds, people who decided they knew how to better invest and make the right decisions. They also looked at people who did have only target date funds. That's all they had in their portfolio. So they never had to make one decision except when I want to retire. And they found that those people that only used target date funds made about 2.3% a year more. Their expectations were that much more because those people who were doing it themselves were putting a lot of money in cash. They were market timing. They were trying to chase recent performance. And when the market went down, they got scared and they bailed out. So I think if you really don't know what you're doing, and aren't willing to do the study time. I mean, we're talking about a decision that's going to change your financial life. And if you won't learn to do it right, the target date fund is the best probability for getting it right that I know.
And again, thank you to Paul Merriman for coming on my podcast. It was great to get to talk to him, and that episode was extremely insightful. So be sure to go check out episode 113 for more information on million-dollar decisions and investing and target date funds. So let's talk a little bit more about them. Yes, Paul Merriman called them one of the greatest inventions, and that's because it's simple. It's super easy. It's a place for you to put your money when you don't know where to put it. Let's say you don't want to pick stocks, or you really don't even want to bother learning what an index fund is. Well, target retirement funds then are just right for you. They're super simple, super easy, and will keep you peace of mind knowing that your money's invested to really allow you to take advantage of it when you need it. Because that's the whole point of a target date fund. Going to be money there when you need it. Dive a little further into a term that I don't hear brought up very much, and that's vesting. What is vesting? So for example, let's lay out a schedule of a vesting schedule, and usually vesting has to do with the money that your employer is giving you. So a typical one that you might see is, let's say you have to work there for a year and then you get access to your 401k, and then you have a 5-year vesting schedule. So let's say after year 1 of your 401k, so you've been in the 401k for 1 year, now you have access and you're fully vested in 20% of the employer match. Year 2, you're at 40%. Year 3, you're at 60%. Year 4, you're at 80%. And then you reach that 5th year in your 401k. Now you're at 100% vested employer match. What does that mean? Well, that percentage means how much of the money you're going to get if you were to leave the 401k plan or the company. So if you left and you've been in the 401k for 2 years, then you're going to get a total that's 40% of the employer match. One thing that is extremely important to note here, and possibly a question running through your mind, is you're asking yourself, well, am I only going to get 40% of the money that I put into the 401k? And the answer to that is no. You're going to get 100% of the money that you put into the 401k. But your employer has some stipulations on the free money they're giving you, and that's okay. They're trying to keep people at the company for a long time, and it's a way to maintain retention when people are saying, oh, if I just go 1 more year, I get 20 more percent of my 401k. It's something that almost kept me at a company for longer because I was considering getting a little bit more of that employer match. But it's okay if you don't get it. That's often a situation called golden handcuffs where you're staying just for the benefits. But that's how a vesting schedule works. Just remember, you're always going to get 100% of the money you put into your 401k. It's always your money. So let's take a step back to the beginning of your employment with someone and you're starting your 401k. What does it mean to start your 401k? Well, it likely means you signed up for the plan. You probably have a new bank account and a new online account that you can sign into for your 401k. Starting your 401k just means beginning that journey and beginning to invest in your 401k. It's something that you should keep in mind and something that can be very important with an employer is you want to know when you can start that 401k. Because like I keep mentioning, maybe it's a year after employment. Maybe it's 6 months after employment. You got to know when you can start it. And then you got to make sure you're actually investing the money once you start using the 401k. Because it's extremely important that the money's invested, because if it's not, it's just sitting there in cash. And then all you're doing is you're just locking your money up as cash, which is just boring. It doesn't take advantage of the taxability or the tax favored nature of 401ks when it's just locked up as cash. You're making maybe just a tiny little bit of money when you could be making a whole lot more if it's invested appropriately in an index or a target retirement fund. So make sure once you start it, you actually get the money invested. So now that you've started your 401k, you've learned a little bit about vesting schedules and you're getting that employer match, but now it's time to move on. You found a new job, you're switching employers. What do you do? What do you do when you leave an employer? Well, you could leave the money in that 401k, but that might make for headaches later down the road when you're calling all your different employers, because I know Younger people tend to have more employers throughout their entire career. So you could have a whole host of 401ks all over the place. So I like to roll over my 401ks into an IRA in one place where I can keep track of all the money, where I know where it is, and where I trust the account that it's in. Because what if your old employer switches 401k plans and you have no idea? So now you go to find your 401k money and you just led on a wild goose chase all over the place until you can find the money. So I like to roll them over to IRAs. It's super simple. You can either call the place where you're trying to roll it over to, whether it's M1 Finance, Fidelity, Vanguard, any of those kind of places, and say, hey, can you help me out with this? And it's very likely that they will contact the 401k company for you and get that rollover started. Or you can call your old 401k plan and say, hey, I'm looking to roll this over to an IRA. Can you help me get that process started? It's super simple. Any of these companies will help you do it. Super easy. You never have to see the money. It just moves from one digital place to another digital place, and you're good to go. Then, of course, make sure that money is still invested once it gets to the other side. Speaking of investing, what do you do once you're investing the money? How do you keep it simple? Well, I have several podcast episodes about keeping investing simple. You want to make sure it's invested simply in a target date fund or an index fund. I definitely, if you have the access to, would not recommend trying to do single stock picking in your 401k. Your 401k is very likely the most important asset that you're going to have in order to be able to retire. So you don't want to bet it all on one company, and then if that company goes down, you're just out of luck. You want to make sure it's bet on everything, whether it's a target date fund or whether it's an index fund like the S&P 500 or a total market fund. Play it safe with your 401k and just keep it simple. You don't want to have to monitor it. You don't want to have to change it. You don't want to have to try trading and moving money around in your 401k because that just sounds like a headache. So keep it simple, put it in a mutual or index fund or target date fund, and just keep it simple and ride the market. A couple things to wrap up the video here. Make sure you actually get started with your 401k. Make sure it's invested. Make sure it's invested simply as well. Whether it's a target date fund or some simple index fund, make sure you keep it easy. Make sure you're getting at least the employer match. And if you're not sure why, rewind this video and rewatch it because you're going to want to make sure to get your employer match. And if you're a little unsure about whether you want to actually get started with your 401k, go mess around with the compound interest calculator. That will get you motivated to want to put some money into your 401k. And then once you're ready to leave, make sure you roll over your 401k to an IRA to keep it simple and keep it all in one place. But if you like today's video, you're going to like episodes 119 and episode 113 of my podcast. Episode 119 just recently came out, so if you haven't given it a listen, please make sure to go and do that. Episode 113 featured Paul Merriman, where we talked about $1 million decisions and the importance of getting your investing plan right and keeping it simple. Both are really good episodes, and of course, they'll be linked down in the description below. So if you enjoyed today's video, leave a comment of something you took away from the video and go and have a money talk about a friend with it. But thank you for listening and watching Money Talk with Skylar Fleming. Have a great week.